Your eyes are not deceiving you. I am coming to you live at 1:05 p.m. in the afternoon on a Monday. What is up? Welcome to this live edition of Couz's Corner. Belly yourself up to the bar and let me pour you out this shot of top-shelf college football news and analysis. On tap in this episode, I am going to go over a list of some of the top candidates to replace Neal Brown as head coach of West Virginia. I've written down some names, done some research, written down some notes. I'm going to give you pros, cons, and my opinion on each one. And yes, again, I'm coming to you 1 o'clock p.m. on the afternoon. I am taking some vacation days away from my day job. Good timing, I guess, right? I had this planned a while, but that enables me to bring you guys more content. Unfortunately, I've already gotten behind today. I intended to do this earlier, but I got held up. I had to take my car to get an oil change, and man, I was there for like over 2 hours. So anyway, did not get a good head start like I wanted to, but it did give me time to make notes. So that all worked out. And I've got several names I'm going to talk to you about today. There are more names than this being floated out, but these are the names that are on top of mind for me. And then I have a couple others I'm probably going to do separate shows on that may be pre-recorded. I don't know. We'll see. I'm doing this live just because I have so many of these names I want to go over. It would take me multiple pre-recorded shows to get them all in. And David, I'm kind of with you, my brother. I don't care who it is. I just want to be competitive again and actually enjoy watching games again. I agree. I think that's where we all are. I don't really have. I've had several people reach out. Who's your favorite? I don't know that I really have a set one favorite right now. I have several guys that intrigue me more than others. But I don't know that I have a set favorite. Thank you, Ethan, for subscribing and turning on your notifications. What's up, Shaq? Thank you for joining. Thank you all for being a VIP member, along with David and Denny Allen, who's in the house as well. Let's go ahead and get started on this list. And by the way, for those of you watching over on X, thank you for watching. After the show, I ask that you please come over, check out my YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share it with your family and friends, all of that. It will not go unnoticed. And also have to give a shout out to my channel sponsors here, BetUS Online Sportsbook, and Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, attorneys at law. Now, let's go ahead and dig into this list of candidates. The first one I'm going to talk about today. Oh, I got to do this first. Hold on. I got to do some housekeeping. I'll be back in about 35 seconds. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians, because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. All right, thank you for sticking around and being patient while I give a shout out, a little bit more lengthy shout out to Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, my primary sponsor here on the channel. Now, let's go ahead and get started with the first name on the list. I'm going to start off with the three people that have ties to West Virginia. These are the two of these, at least, are names that are popping up on almost every list. They're kind of the obvious names, right, because of their ties to the state and their history here and all that. But the first name is Jimbo Fisher. A lot of people want Jimbo Fisher. A lot of people don't. To be honest, I have been one of those proponents of bringing Jimbo Fisher to West Virginia. He's unemployed. I think they can get him at a fair salary, probably $3 to $4 million a year. And again, I'm estimating there, but I don't think they're going to have to break the bank for him, because he already has that guaranteed money from A&M of about $8-9 million a year. That's not going away. He wants to get back into coaching. From everything I've read and heard, I've even heard from sources he wants the West Virginia job. Now, there have been a lot of people who say, well, Jimbo Fisher wasn't successful at Texas A&M. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say he was not successful. Here's his record. He's overall as a head coach at both Florida State and A&M. He's won 28-48 as a head coach. That's a 73% winning percentage. That's pretty friggin' good. He went 83-23 at Florida State and won a national championship in 2013. At Texas A&M, not as much success. He went 45-25 there. Now, he started off at Texas A&M okay. He even had a 10-win season. He beat Alabama at Kyle Field there at A&M. I think they were ranked 1 in the country at the time. It was a huge upset. Everybody thought the Jimbo train was rolling there. And after his first couple seasons, he got an extension there. That's how he landed that huge contract. Then things seemed to have went downhill, right? He had all these top recruiting classes. He had a top 5 class most years, and I think top 10 every year he was at A&M through 2018, from 2018 through 2023. But the last 3 years he was at A&M, things started kind of declining a little bit. And I hadn't really noticed this until I started digging into the numbers. But on the road against Power 4 opponents at Texas A&M, he was 7-17. His road record against Power 4 opponents, that's SEC and then the few non-conference games he played on the road. That's not very good. His record in the SEC, 27-21. Now, that doesn't sound terrible, right? But again, most of those were home wins. He struggled on the road. And in his last 2 seasons at Texas A&M, he was 6-9 in conference play. So not too great. Most of his wins his last 2 seasons were against either non-conference opponents, some group of 5, and he even dropped a game to Appalachian State during that time as well. So for whatever reason, his tenure at A&M took a downturn. I don't know if it was his fault, if there was issues administratively. I don't know what the issue was, but Jimbo's career seemed to be on a decline, and I guess that's what A&M saw, and they decided to move on and bring Mike Elko in. Now, in all fairness, I do think A&M's expectations were a little too high. I don't think Texas A&M is ever going to be a college football blue blood. They never have been. I don't care how much money you throw at it. They're in the state of Texas competing with the Longhorns for recruits. Not to mention they're having to compete with Baylor and TCU, who are now Power 4 institutions. And SMU is now a Power 4 institution. They're having to compete with Houston is now a Power 4 institution. They're having to compete with all these Texas Tech. They're having to compete with all these other in-state schools for recruits. Yes, they have more money than a lot of those schools. But with profit sharing and revenue sharing rather coming down the pipeline, I don't think Texas A&M is ever going to do any better, at least as a program, than what Jimbo was doing there. But the thing is, the coach before Jimbo was doing just as good without that huge paycheck. So I just think Texas A&M is an 8 to 9 win football team most years. I think that's where they are, and that's what Jimbo was doing there. I think he averaged about 7 wins a year. Now, so my opinion on Jimbo, that's the negative. The positive, you walk into a kid's living room with 2 national championship rings, the one you won as a head coach and then the one that you got as an OC during your time at LSU under Saban. That will carry a lot of weight. How many national championship winning coaches are even out there right now? Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher, Bob Stoops, he's not available. I doubt Nick Saban's available. You got to make the call and ask, right? But I doubt Nick Saban's coming back to coaching. He retired for a reason. You've got, obviously, Kirby Smart at Georgia. You've got Dabo Swinney at Clemson. Not a whole lot of coaches out there right now have won a national championship, especially none that are available. Out of all those coaches, there's only one of them that are actually available, and that's Jimbo Fisher, and at least that I think are available. So that carries a lot of weight. He is from West Virginia, so that carries some weight too. He knows the culture of the state. He will know how to recruit kids to the state. I think he can explain the culture. His dad was a coal miner. You know, he can preach that. He's an awesome recruiter. He had top 5 and 10 classes during his entire reign at A&M. Got a lot of great classes at Florida State, was able to recruit Jameis Winston to Florida State. Just a few examples. He's an awesome recruiter. Can he build and sustain a program long-term? Not sure. Is his offense outdated and antiquated? That's another question. How can he get along with people? That's another question. There are rumblings out there. And again, I've never met Jimbo Fisher. This is just stuff I've heard from behind the scenes from people who do have ties to some of these programs he's coached. He doesn't seem to get along with people. So take that for what it's worth. Again, I don't know that. I'm just repeating what I've heard from others who do know a little bit about Jimbo and his tenures at these two schools. So I am not. I have now changed my mind. I am not. Jimbo Fisher is no longer my favorite to land the job. Now, would I hate to hire? No, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it, and you could definitely do worse. And if Wren decides to hire Jimbo, I'll trust Wren's decision. But me personally, probably not at the top of my list. Let me go ahead and address the super chat from Appalachia Africa Twin. Thank you, man. He says, great timing and topic today, brother Couz. Next time, bring me your car and I'll have you in and out in 30 minutes or less like Domino's Pizza. No charge for you. Well, brother, I appreciate that, but I'm not even sure. You have to shoot me a DM or send me a comment on YouTube or something, or shoot me a DM on Twitter or Facebook. Let me know where you're at, man. I'll definitely give it a shot. And the place I go to, I like, by the way, I'm not going to name their names, but I do like them. They're great people. But today I was in kind of a rush, so I was kind of impatient, but yeah, I do appreciate the offer, brother. The next one I'm going to talk about is kind of the other name that's obvious, and that's Rich Rodriguez. A lot of West Virginia fans want Rich Rod back. A lot would actually detest bringing Rich Rod back. Rich Rod in his overall career as a head coach is 189 and 129 and 2. He has a couple ties in there. His tenure at West Virginia obviously was his most successful. He went 60 and 26 at WVU. That we all know. He led West Virginia to 3 straight double-digit win seasons during their years there in the Big East. It was the weakened Big East after Miami and Virginia Tech had left, but nonetheless, it was the Big East, and they were a BCS conference. Obviously won a lot of bowl games there. Really the heyday of West Virginia Mountaineer football outside the 1988 and 1993 seasons under Nealon. You could say they were the best years to be Mountaineer fans. We're during the Rich Rod era, especially that 2005, 6, and 7 seasons, or those 5, 6, and 7 seasons. After he left West Virginia, obviously he went to Michigan, did not have as much success there, but in my opinion, Michigan, he was having – people at Michigan weren't pulling the rope in the same direction. A lot of the donors didn't want him there from the beginning. They were against the hire. He had trouble getting support there. And honestly, they only gave him 3 years. And you had a guy coming in, was reforming the entire program the way he wanted, rebuilding a culture, installing a brand new offense that they hadn't seen there. It was going to take some time. And they weren't seeing the success after 3 years that they wanted, so they fired him. The coach who replaced him took his team, basically, that he had recruited and won double-digit games the following year. I don't remember if they won the Big Ten or not, but I do remember they won 10 games and I think they played in a New Year's Six bowl game. So under Brady Hoke. And then after once they got through Rich Rod's recruits, Brady Hoke's career went downhill at Michigan. So I credit Rich Rod a lot for what Brady Hoke was able to do in his early tenure there, because he was playing with Rich Rod's guys for the most part. He left Michigan, went to Arizona. He was out coaching for a year. Then he went to Arizona, spent 6 years at Arizona, where he went 43 and 35. So it wasn't super. He only had one losing season, though. That was a 2016 season when they went 3-9. And he also had a 10-win season, though, in 2014, where they appeared in the the Pac-12 championship game. They did get beat by Oregon, and they played in a New Year's Six bowl. Got beat in it, but they won 10 games that year. And listen, it's Arizona. Arizona's not one of the easiest places to win. I would compare it similarly to West Virginia, but without the history. I think it's probably even harder than West Virginia, because Arizona did not have the football pedigree at the time that West Virginia had. They didn't have they weren't as big. They were a basketball school. Kind of still are to a degree. You know, he went to a basketball school where most of the attention, fan support, all that was going to basketball, and he was able to win games there. Again, he didn't have it perfect, and his tenure there ended in controversy because of some off-the-field scandals. Some of it I think wasn't true. Some may have been true. But nonetheless, it was off-the-field stuff really that ended his tenure at Arizona. And then he was out of coaching for a few years, and then he got back in he was offensive coordinator at Louisiana Monroe. He was offensive coordinator at Ole Miss, until he finally landed another head coaching gig where he's at now at Jacksonville State. He ushered Jacksonville State into the FBS level, where they've been now for 2 years. And in both years, he has taken the Jacksonville State Gamecocks to the Conference USA Championship game. Their first 2 years as an FBS school, they are going to the conference title game. They finished 9-4 last year. They're 8-4 right now, getting ready to play for that title game here in a few days. His overall record at Jacksonville State, 17-8. His offense is putting up huge numbers, as you would expect from Rich Rod. Again, the West Virginia ties. Again, he's won at West Virginia before. He has the hard edge mentality that most West Virginia fans want to see come back to Morgantown. Do I think Rich Rod has what it takes to win at West Virginia? I do. But here's the two big question marks for me with Rich Rodriguez. Number one, can he coach and be a head coach in today's environment with NIL and the transfer portal? He has not had to do that at the highest level in his career. Since the NIL and transfer portal era has came in, his only head coaching gig has been at Jacksonville State. Yes, they're impacted by that, but not at the same level. So could he do it at the highest level? I think a lot of it would have to do with donor support. I think he would get donor support. It's pretty well known that he and Ken Kendrick, West Virginia's biggest donor, are close. So he would have Ken Kendrick support. Some of the other major donors would back Rich Rod as well. So I have no doubt he would get donor support to bring in NIL money. So that I don't think would be an issue, but managing it might be. How does he manage NIL? How would he handle his relationship with Country Roads Trust? All those things. The other question mark I have with Rich Rod is there's such a huge percentage of the fan base right now that are against bringing him back. Probably a good 40% of them, if not more, are against bringing Rich Rod back. And you might make them so angry they don't support the program as much. So you may actually cause more division by bringing Rich Rod back. And when you make a coaching hire, you want to unite the fan base. You want them to unite around the program. I don't think bringing Rich Rod's going to do that. Again, I have no issue bringing Rich Rod back personally. I actually think it might be a pretty good move. What other group of 5 head coaches out there have the pedigree of Rich Rodriguez? Not many. I don't hate the move at all. I just fear that it would be so divisive, and now is not the time to have division within the fan base, in my opinion. We know his offense is going to put up points. We know he'd get donor support, but fan support is what I would be afraid of under Rich Rodriguez. All right, let's go. We got some more super chats here. Another one from my guy, Appalachia Africa Twin. Jimbo, Rich Rod both has massive recruiting avenues in state of Florida. That's a great point. That is a great point. And I'm sure Jimbo has now probably developed some connections in Texas as well, which could help. But we all know West Virginia has tried to recruit Texas in the past, and it just has not worked out quite well for them. And Denny Allen, you make a great point, my brother. He says they might be angry initially, but if he wins, you will be surprised how happy people get. And that's true. Winning cures all, right? Winning cures everything. But it would be the initial division that I would worry about. And if he doesn't win, what happens if he doesn't win? The program may be in a worse spot than they are today. That's the problem. Let me see. Denny Allen says, I am pulling for Rich. He spent enough time in purgatory, and I care more about winning than how my feelings were hurt almost 20 years ago. Bring back Rich. And I'm with you, Denny. Once I heard his side of the story, I kind of changed my opinion on that whole thing. And look, 17 years have passed, man. Let bygones be bygones. Time heals all wounds. It's not the same administration it was. I'm sure Rich has learned from his experiences and his mistakes. He's probably a different person. Stanley Metz agrees. He would instantly divide the fan base, and WVU can't afford to do that, especially after keeping NB around way too long. I say RR's return has almost zero chance of happening due to that alone. Yeah, I don't think Wren, to be frank, I don't think Wren's going to bring back any of these guys. Now, look, is it impossible? No, I just don't see it happening. Tom Dean talks about Jimbo's buyout. He says, if someone is getting continued payments from an employer that fired them before the end of their contract, those payments end if a new employer. And in most contracts, Tom, that either happens or there's an offset built in. The thing with Jimbo's contract, I don't know who Texas A&M's attorneys were, but they did a terrible job. His contract was 100% guaranteed, and there's no offset built in. So even if he gets a new job, say he comes to West Virginia, makes $4 million a year, he still gets the full buyout from A&M in addition to the $4 million a year he makes at West Virginia. So again, his agent did a fantastic job. Can't say the same about Texas A&M. All right, let's go to the next name on the list, and it's another familiar name to Mountaineer Nation, and it's Tony Gibson, former DC at West Virginia. Now, I have been one who has been a proponent, a supporter of Tony Gibson being a head coach at West Virginia at some point, and even at points in the past. Here's his. Now, he doesn't have any head coaching experience. Now, there are reports out there saying he is a finalist for the Charlotte head coaching position that has come open at the G5 level. So he's in the running for that job. But here is, he was the DB coach at West Virginia from 2001 to 2007. He left with Rich Rod to go to Michigan. Then he went to Arizona for a year. Then he came back to West Virginia to work for Coach Holgerson, was an assistant for a year or two, and then became defensive coordinator in 2014. Here are some of the accolades of that defense. In 2016, the defense led the Big 12 in scoring defense and total defense. In 2018, they led the Big 12 and were 20th nationally in tackles for loss. They were also 20th nationally in interceptions and total takeaways. They were second in the Big 12 in that category. 2016 and 2018 were two of the best years West Virginia ever had in the Big 12. 2016, they won 10 games. 2018 was the year they were in the conversation for the Big 12 title up until the last week of the season. That was the year with Will Greer and those guys. In 2015, he was second in the nation in interceptions. The defense was. They were fifth in the nation in turnovers forced and 11th in the nation in third down defense. Well, at NC State, he continued his success and maybe even did better. In 2021 at NC State, they were top 5 in the ACC in 5 categories. They also led the ACC in interceptions and were 14th nationally in 2021. And during his tenure as DC between 2021 and 2023 at North Carolina State, Tony Gibson's defense was a top 25 defense. Now, they fell off a little bit this year. They're not doing as good this year, but, all that's not on him. And he hasn't had great seasons every year, but he's had a lot of really successful seasons as a defensive coordinator. He's won Defensive Coordinator of the Year. He's been a finalist for the Broyles Award for top assistant coach in the country. Tony Gibson has a lot of accolades. He's been a candidate for head coaching positions time and time again. Unfortunately, has not landed one yet. Again, I would not hate this hire, but I also would not be my first choice. I think Tony Gibson, I would like to see him get some head coaching experience at the G5 level before coming to West Virginia. And the reason I say that is, there's a reason he's been passed up. There has to be a reason he's been passed up for head coaching jobs in the past. I don't know what that reason is, but is there something missing there? That's a question mark I would have. I do love Gibby. He's a great motivator. He's a great recruiter. He's been given awards for his recruiting prowess. A lot of fans don't like the 3-3-5 stack defense that he runs, but that right now is the most popular defense in the Big 12. Iowa State runs it almost to perfection at times. A lot of teams are now running it. And the thing with Tony is he's really good at getting the right people in the right spots in that defense, right? He knows where to put guys. He runs an more aggressive style of the 3-3-5 with a lot of blitzes, a lot of disguised blitzes and those types of things. And he can develop guys. He can put guys in the NFL. And I do think he's a great leader of men. I think he would be great as a leader for the program. I think he would put together a great staff. I just have questions about his ability to run, to be a full-time head coach at that level in this era. But again, if Ren Baker interviews him and feels like he's the man for the job, I would absolutely trust it. And I would love to have Gibby back at West Virginia because I love Gibby. I love his personality. I love his mentality. Again, he's worked for Rich. He was Rich Rod for a long time. He's worked under Dana. Now he works under Dave Dorn at NC State. So he has a lot of head coaches he's learned from, and he would be able to bring that over as a coach. As a matter of fact, the more I talk about it, the more I actually think I would like it, to be honest. But and I would not hate also. I would also not hate for West Virginia to go the defensive route this time with a coaching hire. Offensive coordinators seem to be getting the jobs, most of the jobs in the throughout. In anytime there's a lot of coaching moves, the offensive coordinators always seem to be the more hot names. Not sure why that is, but that just seems to be the case most years. But I wouldn't hate it if West Virginia decides to go the defensive route. It would definitely be outside the norm because they went with an offensive guy almost every time in the past. Maybe they flipped the script this time. Who knows? But again, I wouldn't hate a Tony Gibson hire, but I wouldn't necessarily put him at the top of my list either, because I don't think it would be. I think they need to make a hire that excites the fan base, and I'm not sure that would do it, at least not at this stage of his career. Real quick, before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to my other sponsor. That's BetUS Online Sportsbook. If you're looking for a new sportsbook, look no further than our friends over at BetUS Online. Right now, with your very first deposit, you get a 150% sign-up bonus with promo code YouTube150. Again, promo code YouTube150 at checkout gets you 150% bonus on your very first deposit and 125% bonus on your next two deposits, up to $2,000. You must be 18 years of age or older to play. Please play responsibly, and if you or anyone you know struggles with a gambling addiction, please call 1-800-GAMBLER for help. And again, if you can't afford to play, please don't play. All right. Next name. Now we're going to talk about some names who don't necessarily all have ties to West Virginia, right? There's one that does, but we'll talk about him later. But right now, these are names that have come up, some more than others, but they are currently working at other schools as either a coordinator and in some cases a head coach at the G5 level. The first one I want to talk about is Andy Kotelnicki. Now, Mike Ostie reported yesterday that Andy Kotelnicki was interviewing for the job. We all know Andy Kotelnicki right now is the offensive coordinator at Penn State, and he has that Penn State defense 19th in the country in total offense, which is a vast improvement from where they were before he took over. They're 5th in the country in passing efficiency and 14th in third down conversion percentage. So they're playing well on offense right now. But Penn State, we all know, is known more for their defense, but their offense was really what was holding them back. They bring in Andy Kotelnicki. They're now competing for a Big 12 title this coming weekend and will likely land a spot either way in the college football playoff. West Virginia fans may even remember Kotelnicki more so for his days at Kansas as the offensive coordinator. He came over with Lance Leipold at Kansas a few years back. Listen to some of his accolades of his offenses during his time at Kansas. Look, he helped Lance Leipold bring Kansas back from the dead. They were arguably the worst football program in the country at the FBS level. He helped bring them back. And let's look at since he left, they're back to a 5-win team again. Despite I think Lance Leipold's a great coach, but the people you surround yourself with and your staff are massive. I think Kotelnicki was a huge piece of the success there. And I predicted going into the season, a lot of people were picking Kansas to win the Big 12. I didn't think it was the case because I knew, or at least I had a feeling that Andy Kotelnicki was a huge part of their success, and I knew he wasn't there anymore. But while he was at Kansas, they were in 2022, Kansas was 2nd in yards per play in the Big 12. They had 6 games of 500 yards or more and averaged 438.6 yards a game. In 2023, they were 4th in the Big 12 in pass efficiency, actually 4th nationally, in pass efficiency, 8th in the country in third down conversions, 21st in the country in scoring offense, and 7th in the country in fewest sacks allowed. This is Kansas we're talking about here. We're not talking about Ohio State. We're not even talking about Penn State. We're talking about Kansas. They were a perennial doormat in college football. And these are the kind of numbers their offense was putting up. We all saw what Kansas did to West Virginia in Morgantown in 2022. Absolutely lit up their defense. The defense, I was at that game. They looked so confused on every play. He's great at using odd motions and odd formations. He comes up with all kinds of gadget plays, and nobody knows what the heck to do with it. He's awesome at utilizing tight ends. He's one of the best I've ever seen at knowing how to utilize his tight ends. What he did with Tyler Allen at Penn State has been phenomenal. Andy Kotelnicki is one of the sharpest offensive minds in the country. Now, he has no head coaching experience, so that is one knock on him, I guess you could put. But, man, if you want to bring in a guy who will be innovative and be unique in the way he runs an offense, Andy Kotelnicki is your guy. Now, I actually am high on Andy Kotelnicki for this job, and here's why. You look back at West Virginia's most successful years, for the most part, they were different than everybody else. Back in the Major Harris days, Major Harris was before his time. You didn't see a whole lot of quarterbacks at that time that were also awesome athletes and could run like Major Harris did. That set them apart from most other teams in the country. You look at their success under Rich Rod. They had quarterbacks that could run. The innovative spread offense that he was running. At the time, there wasn't a lot of teams doing that. Rich Rod was innovative in his offense. Now his offense, it's caught up now, and most other teams in the country are running some form of a spread. But he was one of the first coaches to do it. West Virginia was hard to prepare for. They were one of the first teams to run a 3-3-5 stack defense. They were hard to prepare for because they were different than everybody else. West Virginia is never going to have top recruiting classes, more than likely. They're never going to have the most NIL money, more than likely. They have to differentiate themselves in other ways, and one way you do it, you be different. Look at the Press Virginia days with Bob Huggins. Even John Beeline, he was different, ran the 1-3-1 defense that nobody else in the country was running hardly, so it was hard to prepare for. Also ran that Princeton-style offense that was hard to prepare for. Sorry, my nose is itching. My allergies are acting up. But West Virginia's successful years have been when they did something different and unique. Andy Kotelnicki brings that now. How good would he be at running a program overall and not just calling an offense? I don't know the answer to that question. That's what the interview process is for. And again, I trust Wren Baker in his judgment. And they say his interview process is absolutely like he puts guys through the ringer. If you can get through a Wren Baker interview, then you're probably qualified for the job. From everything, even Josh Eilert joked when he interviewed for an interim job on the basketball side. He joked about how hard the interview process was. So he's going to know if you're prepared by the time you get out of it. Look, is it possible he still misses? Absolutely. He's human. And he'll also contact I'm sure he'll talk to Nick Saban. I'm sure he'll talk to, people like Mac Rhodes, who he used to work for, and others he trusts throughout the industry to help guide him in this search. Speaking of Mac Rhodes, and yes, I'm very high on Andy Kotelnicki. Speaking of Mac Rhodes, Wren Baker, Mac Rhodes, for those of you who don't know, is now the athletic director at Baylor. Well, Wren Baker was the assistant AD at Missouri under Mac Rhodes before Mac Rhodes left for Baylor. And there was a football coach on the staff at that time, at least 1 year of that time, named Barry Odom. Barry Odom is a name who's popped up on almost every single candidate list for this job, primarily because of his link to Wren Baker. I think there's also a link that goes back to his days at Memphis, where Wren Baker also worked. Barry Odom was defensive coordinator at Memphis during some of their best years. I think Justin Fuente was the head coach there at the time, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Justin Fuente and Barry Odom was a DC. They had some elite defenses at Memphis during that time. Barry Odom has also been DC at Missouri before he eventually got promoted to head coach there. Now, he was head coach at Missouri from 2016 to 2019. Now, he didn't do great. He was a 500. They were a 500 team during his stretch, 25-25, and he eventually got fired there. So he did not set the world on fire as head coach at Missouri. But a positive of that, he does have experience coaching at the Power 4 level in the SEC, nonetheless. There's not a lot of coaches. Him and Jimbo right now are the only two coaches you could say have experience coaching in the SEC, at least as a head coach. Because there are others on this list that have been coordinators in the SEC. I'll talk about them shortly. But you look at Barry Odom, not great at Missouri. Left there, went to be defensive coordinator at Arkansas under Sam Pittman. Helped their defense rise a few notches and become a really good defense. Barry Odom is a great defensive mind, arguably one of the best in the game. After his success as DC at Arkansas, he got back into the head coaching ranks. He's now at UNLV. He's been at UNLV for 2 seasons. His record is 19-7. He led UNLV to their first 9-win season since 1984. And some other program record setters during his time there because of their success the last 2 years. They're playing for a conference title for the second year in a row. And this is UNLV, folks. They just like Kansas, they were a worse program than Kansas, you could argue, because not only were they really bad, they were a really bad G5 team. Very, very rarely even had winning seasons at UNLV. Very, very rarely made bowl games at UNLV. He's leading them to bowl games. He's leading them to conference title games. Now, a lot of that is because of his staff that he's assembled. The go-go offense run by Brennan Marion, which is extreme. Again, it's something different that other teams aren't running, and it's been very successful. So I have been high on Barry Odom from the get-go, but my only concern is this. If Brennan Marion, there's a lot of talk that Brennan Marion is going to be a head coach himself at some point and may even take over for Odom when he leaves UNLV. If Barry Odom can't bring Brennan Marion with him, I'm worried that he wouldn't have the same levels of success that he had at UNLV. So that concerns me a little bit. So Barry Odom would not be my first choice. If I had to choose between Barry Odom and Andy Kotelnicki, I honestly would probably choose Andy Kotelnicki because of his ties to Pennsylvania, where he could recruit. He also has ties to the New York area. He coached in Buffalo with Lance Leipold for a long time. I think he has worked and lived close enough to West Virginia's recruiting base that he could recruit the area. I'm not sure about Barry Odom. Memphis is about as close as he's been, as far as I can tell, to West Virginia in his career. How could he recruit Ohio? How well could he recruit Pennsylvania? How well could he recruit Virginia, the DMV area, the Northeast, those areas that West Virginia need to hit really hard? Florida even. I'm concerned about that a little bit. If he could bring Brennan Marion along with him, and we knew Brennan Marion would be there a while, then I would be all for it. But I'm just not sure. Like I said, Brennan Marion, even if he came with him, how long will it be before he takes a head coaching job somewhere else? So I'm just not convinced. If Barry Odom if Brennan Marion leaves Barry Odom and gets a head coaching job and they continue their success at UNLV, then my opinion might change. Or if Barry Odom goes somewhere else and has success without Brennan Marion, my opinion may change. But right now, I think Brennan Marion may be a huge piece of the success there at UNLV. All right, let me check the chat room real quick before I continue on with this list. Let me see. You got another super chat coming in here from Andy Abel. Andy Abel. Thank you for the donation. He says, I would like to see someone in the long haul. Agreed, Andy. That's why most of these coaches, and I haven't been saying their ages, but Jimbo's about 59 or so. Rich Rod is 61. Barry Odom is only 48 years old. Andy Kotelnicki is only 47 years old. Tony Gibson, I'm not sure how old he is. I think he's in his 50s, somewhere in his 50s. But some of these other coaches I'm going to talk about here shortly are also in their 40s or even younger in some cases. So do you want – and if you look at some of the coaches around the country, Dan Lanning, young coach. Heck, Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State's 34 years old, guys, and he's got Arizona State playing for a Big 12 championship in his second season as a head coach. Mario Cristobal is only 51. Look at Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, a very young coach, and the success he's having. He has Notre Dame rolling right now. Some of your better coaches throughout the country, if you look around, with a few exceptions, are all pretty young, in their 40s, early 50s. Josh Heupel at Tennessee's in his 40s. So does West Virginia want to go with an older coach like a Rich Rod or a Jimbo, or do they want to go with somebody younger that might be there for, to your point, Andy, for several years? Now, a lot of people's concern is if you get a coach that's young is going to be there. If he has any level of success, he's just going to go to the SEC or the Big Ten anyway, right? That's a concern a lot of people have. But we don't know that to be the case. WVU Fan 13 who's also a VIP member says Tony Gibson has close relationships with Southeast Virginia, the Virginia Beach area. And that's fair. And he is a great recruiter. Tony's an awesome recruiter. And again, I would not hate that hire, by the way. I'm not going to hate any hire, to be honest, because I trust Ren Baker and his process. And I trust his relationships he has throughout the industry. I trust he'll make the right decision. So I'm not going to hate any hire. And I am a huge Gibby supporter of Gibby, but he's not necessarily at the top of my list. Matt Gandy, another VIP member, says getting a lower level head coach just gives me pause after Brown. Not saying he isn't the right guy, but it's just such a risk. Great point. Denny Allen says, if you address this, forgive me. I am working and listening at the same time. How do you think Kotelnicki will fit as far as culture? And, that's a great question, Denny. I don't know the answer to that. But again, I think that's one thing Ren's going to look hard at. And Ren has talked about multiple times. Being head coach at West Virginia is different than a lot of other jobs around the country. As soon as you get hired as a football coach here, you automatically become a celebrity. and arguably the most recognizable face in the state. When you go out in public, people are going to know who you are from there on out. You can no longer have a private life. So not everybody's suited for that. You know, you're also going to want somebody who has that blue collar. I think he would have that. But again, Ren's going to hash all that out in the interview process. So honestly, I can't answer your question. But when you look at just from his offensive philosophy, the fact he has experience recruiting probably now that he's worked in Pennsylvania for a year, he probably has learned a little bit about the recruiting landscape there. Maybe could even bring a few players with him from Penn State. I don't know. After only being there a year, that might be a stretch. But it's possible. What quarterback or wide receiver wouldn't want to go play for Andy Kotelnicki? Because you have a chance to put up really big numbers. Hearing anything on Marshall, I am not. There are rumors floating around that Charles Huff is taking the job at Southern Miss, but he has debunked that, says that's not the case. So who knows? Doc Holliday did a great job at Marshall. I actually didn't understand why they chose to fire him. For everything I heard, it was Governor Jim Justice forced him out basically because he's a Marshall alum, and for whatever reason didn't like him. But I don't know. Tom Dean says Andy Kotelnicki in a heartbeat. Kansas took 2 steps back after he left. And Tom is a Kansas fan, y'all, so he can tell you Andy Kotelnicki is a heck of a coach. Tom, do you think – you've probably heard Andy in press conferences. You may know more about his recruiting. Do you think he would fit the culture of a school like West Virginia where there are no pro teams in the state? They're the only Power 4 team in the state. Would he like being a celebrity, or does he prefer a job where he can kind of be behind the scenes and be left alone? You know, I don't know his personality. Would he fit the hard work, blue collar, you know, me against the world, us against the world mentality of West Virginia? Does that seem like Andy Kotelnicki to you based on what you've seen? WVU Fan 13 says, just now on the Pat McAfee show, Pat asked Bill Belichick if he wanted to coach WVU. Coach smiled and said, I'll talk to you about that. Interesting. Huh. Now, Pat McAfee, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to talk about this I meant to talk about this before I got started on the list, but this is a long show, guys, so bear with me. Pat McAfee put out a very interesting tweet yesterday that some of you may not have seen, and if you have, my apologies. I'm being repetitive, but if you haven't, here it is. It says, this is from Pat McAfee yesterday after the news broke later in the day. He says, this WVU coaching news has made for a rather wild last few hours. I'd like to say thank you at Neal Brown WVU for trying your best and representing WVU with class over the last 6 years. Good luck with everything going forward. Now, there's a P4 head coaching gig with a great brand and history that doesn't have a pro team in its state open. Also, a very passionate fan base. I've been on the phone quite a bit. Something special is possible. At Ren Baker is in a great spot. I have faith he's going to get it right. Let's go. Now, there are he left that open for interpretation. A lot of people are running rampant with this, thinking maybe he's going to help get Nick Saban there. I've even heard the Belichick name brought up mostly in jest, but and again, I don't know if they were talking about that in jest or what on the show, but I mean, something like that to me is a dream, not a reality. But man, a man can dream, right? What if something like that would happen? You talk about putting West Virginia on the national map. If you got somebody like a Nick Saban, even if you bring Nick Saban in just for a couple of years and he helps groom the next guy, which I actually think I have another video planned for. I don't want to give away too much. If they could do something, pull a rabbit out of a hat and do something like that, man, my gosh, the splash it would make nationally would be massive. But this goes to show me that Pat McAfee he cares about West Virginia and their success. He's active. I'm not saying that he's going to help make the coaching decision, but he's talking to probably people like Ren Baker. He may be talking to other donors because he's a donor himself. He's given he's donated or pledged at least $1 million to Country Roads Trust. So he's given money to Country Roads Trust. He promotes West Virginia on his show and on College Game Day all the time. He's the biggest advocate and best advocate for Western University football right now. So I guarantee you he has at least a little bit, maybe not a lot, but at least a little bit of pull and a little bit of influence here, right? again, he's probably not telling Wren, hey, you need to hire this guy or this guy. And they may not be asking him his opinion, but he might be helping be a middleman to say, hey, have you thought about this guy? Let me get you a conversation, and at least be, or could be planting seeds to Wren Baker about certain people who he may have connections with that Wren don't. Again, it's all in business and in life. It's all about relationships. And with Pat McAfee having the relationships he has across the country, Wren Baker can lean on that in this. And Wren Baker has shown that he will do that in his coaching searches. He likes to lean on other people and not try to do everything himself. He doesn't live in a box or a bubble. He expands his search, he expands his reach, his influence, and he's not afraid to ask other people for their opinion. So Pat McAfee, in some way, has been involved in this, at least through back channel conversations. I just wanted to share that with you guys who may not have heard about it. So thank you for that reminder, WVU Fan 13. And Matt Gandy also says Andy could maybe tap into the Pennsylvania, Ohio talent. People seem to like to play for him. Yeah. Yep. You didn't see a lot of people leaving the Penn State program when he came, right? Arthur Smith, the OC of the Steelers. I don't see him leaving the NFL, John, but I have seen that name thrown around a little bit. Gary Patterson. That's another name that I haven't even considered yet, and I haven't seen on any list. Appalachia Africa Twin says Gary Patterson, no buyout and knows defense. He absolutely does know defense and doesn't have a buyout. My concern with Gary Patterson, A, is his age, and B, his last year at Texas, at TCU did not go well. They had a losing season. I heard through the grapevine that he, I think he kind of rubbed people the wrong way. Again, I think he's can be abrasive at times. Not sure how he relates to today's players. That's another thing about hiring younger coaches. I think they do a better job of in the era of the transfer portal. If a player doesn't like you, they're going to leave, right? So it matters that you can build that's one thing you can say about Neal Brown. His players loved him for the most part. Okay. Yes, there were always exceptions, but you've seen all the players come out in support of him the last couple of days or the last 24 hours. The players love him. Former players coming out supporting him. They like him. They like playing for him. They like the family atmosphere and the culture he's built there. So I'm not sure Gary Patterson can do that still in today's era, but I could be wrong. But it's hard to argue with that pedigree, though, for sure. All right, let's go ahead and get back to the list here. I think I have two more. Yep, I only got one more name. No, I got two more names. I got two more names to talk about on this list. The first one is another familiar name to West Virginia fans, at least it should be, and it's Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator at Miami. Shannon Dawson, if you don't remember, was the offensive coordinator under Dana Holgorsen the last few years of his time, or not the last few years, but for several years during his time in Morgantown before Shannon actually got Dana called the plays, but Shannon was his OC, kind of like Neal Brown and Chad Scott now. It's kind of the same dynamic. And Shannon had an opportunity to go call plays somewhere, so he left West Virginia. When Dana went, Dana went out and hired Jake Spavital, brought him in, and he actually let Jake call plays. Now, and I saw someone bring Jake's name up in the chat. Jake actually he was a head coach at Texas State for a couple of years, and it did not go well there. He did not have he did not have success there. They fired him. They brought in G.J. Kinney, and G.J. Kinney is actually being listed on some of the media outlets out there, 24/7 Sports to be exact. They actually have G.J. Kinney on their list of potential candidates. So he actually did better at Texas State than what Jake Spavital did. But he is a great play caller now. There's no doubt about it. I'm just not sure if he's ready to be a head coach again. But Shannon Dawson, he's called plays at Southern Miss. He called plays at Kentucky for a year or two. Didn't last at Kentucky. I think he was only there a year, but he did have some success at Southern Miss. Then Dana brought him to Houston with him. I think he was an assistant for a while. Then he got promoted eventually to OC. It's my understanding he called plays there for Coach Holgorsen, or at least a Houston fan would have to answer that and confirm that, but he was the OC nonetheless. During his time there, Houston was 8th nationally in passing offense in 2022. They were also 15th in scoring offense, 22nd in first down offense, 23rd in passing offense, and 25th in red zone offense. So they had a good offense in that 2022 season under Shannon Dawson and Dana Holgorsen. He was on the staff at West Virginia and helped coach a lot of their quarterbacks. He was a quarterbacks coach during his time for the Mountaineers. So he had some success there. And he was the quarterback coach for Clayton Tune at Houston, who broke a lot of school records and even American Conference records during his time as the quarterback at Houston during that time. So he also is good at coaching quarterbacks. And there's one quarterback he's coached that you all may know the name of. I think his name's Cam Ward. I think he might be a Heisman finalist or at least a candidate for the Heisman Trophy. You know, the quarterback of the most potent offense in the country right now in Miami. Shannon Dawson is his OC and quarterback coach. Miami right now is first in the nation in total offense and first in the nation in scoring offense. Shannon Dawson has connections to West Virginia. He's had to recruit while being a coach at West Virginia. Now, would he want to be a head coach at West Virginia? I have my doubts. You know, we all saw when Dana left, he said, hey, you can't win at West Virginia. He didn't think you could win at West Virginia because you can't recruit good enough players. I'm sure he's probably had those same conversations with Shannon at some point while they were sitting around having beer together or whatever. I'm sure they had those conversations. Maybe they didn't, and maybe Shannon doesn't agree with it. I don't know. I do think Shannon Dawson is going to land a Power 4 head coaching job at some point. Would he be my first choice to lead West Virginia? No. Again, would I hate to hire? No, because I do like the fact that he's been around the West Virginia program long enough. I think he understands it some. But I'm not sure how well was he there long enough to learn the culture, though. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure of that. That would be a question mark for me. Again, Wren would figure all that out during the interview process, just like he will with any of the other guys. Could he do it with Barry Odom? I don't know. And can Shannon Dawson recruit in West Virginia's recruiting area? Again, I don't know. I guarantee he could get quarterbacks because all he would have to do is put Cam Ward up there or Clayton Tune and some of the quarterbacks he's had at West Virginia up there and say, hey, these are guys I've coached. He could get great quarterback play probably, but could he lead a program? Again, I don't know the answer to that. He didn't do as good at Miami before they got Cam Ward in there. So that might be a question mark. Again, he didn't do good in his 1 year at the helm at Kentucky calling the offense. So is he ready to lead a program? I don't know. Not my first choice. I would still prefer Andy Kotelnicki over Dawson because I think Andy Kotelnicki's offense is more unique and harder to defend. Shannon Dawson is from the air raid tree. He's going to run similar thing to what Dana runs. A lot of similarities to even what Neal does. Just he likes to throw it a lot more than what Neal does. That's the main difference. It'd be exciting. West Virginia's offense will put up a lot of points, but can he run a program? And again, Shannon Dawson's 47 years old, another younger name on the list. The last coordinator I'm going to talk about, Glen Schuman. I don't have a whole lot to say about Glen Schuman because not a lot needs to be said. Number one, he worked for Nick Saban in Alabama in multiple roles. He was a GA. I think he may have been an analyst, and he was also director of player personnel at one point. When Kirby Smart left Alabama to go be head coach at Georgia, Glen Schuman, it's my understanding, was his very first hire as inside linebackers coach. That was, 8 years ago? Glen Schuman was in his 20s. Glen Schuman is 34 years old, guys. 34 years old and is already the defensive coordinator and play caller for the Georgia defense. According to their website, he is the play caller. Do you remember 2 years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago when they beat TCU in the national title game 65-3 to finish the year 15-0 and undefeated with the top defense in the country, or at least one of them? He was the DC for that team. He's been the DC at Georgia since 2022. He's learned under Nick Saban, and he's learned under Kirby Smart, two of the best to ever do it. He's going to get a Power 4 job somewhere at some point. I venture to guess he's probably going to have the support of Nick Saban. If you want a really young coach who's going to be able to relate to today's recruits, today's players, he's your guy. If you want a guy who knows what defensive talent looks like, he's your guy. If you want a guy who knows what it takes to win a national title, he's your guy. He has worked for two teams who won national championships. One is an assistant staffer, one is a DC. He knows what it takes. He knows the level of talent it takes. And I think he could get the fan base. I think that's a name. When you automatically put Georgia beside somebody's name, it had some weight. National championship ring as an assistant and as a DC. I think he's one of only 2 names on this list to have a national championship at the Power 4 level. Yeah, him and Jimbo would be it. Now, I think Andy Kotelnicki has won some at the Division III level with Lance Leipold. But you want to talk about somebody who's done it at the Power 4 level? Glen Schuman as an assistant, Andy Kotelnicki as an assistant and a coordinator. Or Jimbo as a head coach and as a coordinator have both won national titles. And Glen Schuman also has been successful in the NIL era as a coordinator. I think that's important as well. And so is Andy Kotelnicki. So is Shannon Dawson for that matter. They have Power 4 coordinator experience in the NIL and transfer portal eras. And I think that's important. No head coaching experience again, but again, Kenny Dillingham at 34 has Arizona State playing for a Big 12 title and a chance to go to the CFP. Don't let age hold you back. And I actually think younger might be better in today's time because, like I said, of relatability. He was just in college, 12 years ago, 11 years ago, whatever. He can relate. He will be able to speak their language. Now, there are a lot of other names that I'm not going to go over today because I would be on here for 12 hours. Those are just a few that kind of were at the top of my list. I do have another video planned to mention another kind of idea I had that I wanted to share with my audience that does involve Nick Saban. So just stay tuned for that. And no, I don't think Nick Saban's coming to West Virginia, but I do have one scenario that I think could be possible if you threw out the idea to him. But anyway, Matt Gandy says, write a blank check for Schuman. Hey, got Outlaw College Football in the house, who's also a VIP channel member. He says, Ren Baker this and Ren Baker that. You act like Ren is some AD god. Ren is at fault in all this. I know you had him on your show, so you're man crushing. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, I'm not going to listen to that BS. Ren has he Darren DeVries just beat Gonzaga and Arizona in basketball. Ren Baker hire. You're full of shit, Outlaw. You come in here and you talk your shit every time I do a show, and it gets old, man. You're my buddy, and I appreciate you, but it's kind of aggravating, to be honest with you. And I appreciate you supporting what I do here all the time. But, man, it's just constant. It's constant. It just gets aggravating at times, man. Sorry, guys. I didn't mean to get off on a rant. Ren Baker has been a great AD, and almost every West Virginia fan across the globe will tell you that. There are a few that don't like him. And how is he to blame? He didn't hire Neal Brown, okay? He inherited Neal Brown. He walked into a shit show with the basketball program. So far he's been able to fix it. He hired a home run hire at women's basketball. He's done almost everything right up to this point. So having him on my show has nothing to do with it. I'm privileged to have him on my show, and I'm glad I was blessed. Denny Allen says, one thing you may want to think on Jimbo, I'm not sure he has been successful with lesser talent, and Rich has shown he can win with 3 stars. And that's a great point, Denny. Absolutely a great point. Someone with Florida ties, absolutely. And I know Golesh has been mentioned too. Justin R., I'm glad you brought that up. The head coach at USF right now has been on a lot of lists. What do you think about him? Is he a good coach? I did see it, Tyson. I don't know if were they just joking around or was it actually, were they actually serious? Pat's not coming here. If y'all were talking about Pat McAfee, he's not going to be the coach. He's not qualified. Richard Durr says we thinks we'll know by Wednesday. I don't think it'll be that quick, Richard, because he needs time to conduct interviews. But I do think it'll be fairly quick. I think we'll probably know something. I don't know, probably a week, maybe, if I had to guess. I don't mind discerning outlaw, but that's you make a living off talking trash, man, and that's just not me. I don't get off on that stuff. It's the complete opposite of what I do on this show, to be honest. Tom Dean, that's a great point. My wish list. Okay. I would probably say, I'd probably put Andy Kotelnicki 1, Glen Schuman 2, Rich Rod 3, Jimbo 4, Tony Gibson 5, Shannon Barry Odom 6, and Shannon Dawson 7. Just quickly. That would be my wish list from these guys. Real quick, I want to give another shout out to my channel of sponsors, BetUS Online Sportsbook. If you're looking for a sportsbook, look no further than our friends over at BetUS Online. Right now, you get 150% sign-on bonus with promo code YouTube150 on your very first deposit, 125% on your next 2 deposits, up to $2,000. You must be 18 years of age or older to play. And please, if you do play responsibly. Do not bet your family's savings on gambling. And if you have a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.com. I also want to give another shout out to Katz, Kenner, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law. If you need a personal injury or medical malpractice attorney in the state of West Virginia or the state of Virginia, that's who you call. Call 304-999-HURT or go to yourlawyeryourvoice.com. They will help you out. All right. See. I know you know a lot, Outlaw. Look, man, I know you know a lot. I'm just frustrated. I apologize. It just struck you. It just struck me the wrong way, man. I know you know a lot about football. I've told you that offline. You're one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met about the history of college football. But just the constant trash talk irritates me. I'm sorry. Just being real with you. It sounds like Pat McAfee is going to come out and endorse someone soon. If Ren gets this right, programs will try and poach him. Russell, I think that's going to happen anyway. Ren Baker is a very, very respected AD. His name has actually already popped up for a couple jobs, some more public than others. And so I think I don't think Ren Baker's going to be at West Virginia forever. I don't. I think at some point he will get a P2 job. He's an Oklahoma guy, so if the Oklahoma job would ever come up, and I'm sure he'd probably want it. If the Baylor job, if Mac Rhodes ever decides to leave Baylor, he might want that one. I mean, there are a lot of jobs in that part of the country he may decide he wants. Now, he may not. He may love it in West Virginia and want to stay forever. West Virginia also has a new president coming in next year. Who knows what will happen there. It is imperative that Baker get this hire right, though, because it could impact his future at West Virginia. And if he gets it wrong, and the new president doesn't like it, it could cause issues. Big E7375 with that super chat, he says, we need to let the Rich Rod Fisher and WV ties crap go. Look, I do not think the coach has to have West Virginia ties. I don't. What I do think they need is to understand the culture, to buy into the culture. If it's not already ingrained in them, they need to buy into it. They need to accept it. They need to embrace it. They need to recruit to it. Just like Don Nehlen did, right? Just like Neal Brown did embrace the culture. He was from Kentucky. I don't think culture was an issue with Neal Brown. For whatever reason, it just never translated to the football field. I don't think culture was an issue with Neal Brown. If you have a culture builder like Neal Brown, but somebody who does a better job actually developing, recruiting, and coaching, that's what you want right there. And then Appalachia Africa Twin says, Ren Baker also increasing revenue at WVU2 after being burdened with Shane Lyons' messes. This football hire will tell the tale on Ren Baker. Great point, Appalachia Africa Twin. I totally agree. Thank you again for your continued support of the show. WVU Fan 13 says the only concern that I have that kind of hurt the WVU basketball team last year was how long it took to announce Eilert as the interim coach with no direction on hiring a full-time coach. Yeah, Rim Baker, look, and Mike Ossie talked about this last on his show. Rim Baker apparently loves this kind of stuff. It's what he lives for. He loves digging into analytics. He loves spreadsheets. He loves data, and he loves coaching searches. He loves this part of the job. So he's probably going to take his time doing it. And again, it's better to take your time and get the hire right than to rush and get it wrong too. So, but I do think there is some urgency here. Can't take too long. Do I think Chad Scott has a chance to be retained? Absolutely, I think he does. If he wants to be retained, I absolutely think he has a chance. McAfee mentioned on his podcast that since he has donated to the NIL and such that he deserves to have a say. He then said he would probably endorse someone. That's fair. WVU Fan 13 says we lost a lot of guys off of that basketball team last year. We may have lost him anyway because of Hugs being let go. But I think the length that it took up to figure out what was going on didn't help. The length of time, yeah, and that's fair. Definitely fair. Outlaw says Pat McAfee was a punter and a trash talker, but it's okay when he does it, and yet y'all want to listen to him. I don't listen to Pat McAfee show, brother. I'll be honest with you. I love Pat McAfee. I love how he endorses West Virginia, but I don't watch his show. It's not my cup of tea. If he says something about West Virginia, I'll usually watch that snippet of it, but I don't watch his show. And also, he ain't talking trash to me, so it's different. But I do appreciate you supporting my show, brother. I do. We're just going to have to disagree on some stuff here. Rim Baker hired a women's basketball coach. Woohoo. Done by January. He's going to have to do it by January. Recruiting window. The National Signing Day is this Wednesday. It won't be done by then, I don't think. And then you've got the portal window that opens in a few more days after that on the 10th. Not happening. Nick Saban is president of WVU. I'm not sure he's qualified for that, Tyson. No offense, but he's a football coach. University president has to oversee the entire university, the academic side, the hospital. They're over WVU medicine. I doubt Nick Saban's up for that job at the age he's at. I mean, heck, he retired from coaching, right? For a reason. He probably doesn't want to be burdened with that job. Brandon Vance says Joe Manchin will be president. I'm not sure I'd believe that either, but you never know. It's very possible. All right. Well, listen, guys, I'm going to jump off of here. I've been on here for over an hour. I've got other shows to prepare for here. Like I said, I'm off work the next 3 days, so I'm going to try my best to get out more content than I normally get out. I'm not sure if I'll be able to or not because I do have other responsibilities as well, but we will see. Outlaw says trash talk aside, Jimbo Fisher and Rich Rod have both been winners, and that's fair. And I do think, look, a lot of fans think they don't even have a shot at this job. I actually think they do. Number one, Rich Rod is going to have the backing of some of West Virginia's biggest donors, including Ken Kendrick and some others, maybe even McAfee. We'll see. And then Jimbo, like I said earlier, there aren't a lot of coaches right now alive who have a national championship ring. He's one of them. So that carries a lot of weight. And just because his tenure at A&M didn't end well doesn't mean he can't succeed at West Virginia. It's a different culture, a different conference he'd be playing in. A&M was, I didn't even mention this, A&M, not only was it in the SEC, it was in the toughest conference in the SEC at the time, the SEC West. He had to play Alabama, Auburn, and LSU in every single year. Ole Miss was on the come up at that point. So, he had a really tough road to hoe there. And I just don't think Texas A&M's ever going to be. Texas A&M is trying to be Texas. Look, no offense to Texas A&M. They're trying to be Texas. They're not Texas. I'm sorry. They're never going to be Texas. They're going to be a 7, 8, 9 win team almost every year. They'll compete for a conference title once in a while, but they're going to be a perennial 8, 9 win team, just like West Virginia is. So their expectations at Texas A&M, in my opinion, were too lofty. I don't care how good you recruit. You weren't going to beat Alabama, Auburn, and LSU and Ole Miss every year. Because you know what? They have great coaches. They have great NIL, and they have great fan bases too. So that's just my rant on that. Is Jimbo my first choice? Absolutely not. But I wouldn't hate it. And Rich Rod, again, backing of a lot of donors. He knows the culture. He knows the state. He knows how to recruit to that culture. And he would bring a hard edge to back to the program that a lot of fans are missing. All right. Thanks for the comment, Outlaw. We're still friends, I'm assuming. But all right. All right. Rich Rod is the answer. Look at his record at Jacksonville State. He is a winner. He recruits at a high level. It's all fair. All right. Well, I'm going to jump off of here, guys. Thanks again. Let me make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I did. Tom Dean, thank you for the super chat, my man. He says, the reason this Kansas fan watches is because you're not a trash-talking loudmouth. You're a real dude. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the support, man. You've always been there and been loyal to me. I appreciate it. You're a Kansas fan, but you've always been a huge supporter. And I do have a Big 12 show planned here coming up, so hopefully you'll find out where your Jayhawks land on my final tier rankings list. And then, I'm going to do a show, where did I go wrong? Where did I go right in my Big 12 preseason predictions? I have that planned too. I actually probably combine those shows into one. That'll be coming up hopefully either later today or tomorrow. So stay tuned. Thanks again to everybody for hopping on the show. Oh, another super chat. Thank you guys. Matt Gandy says, good show, Couz. Appreciate the coverage. And I appreciate your support. I appreciate everybody watching out there and listening. Don't forget to hit the like button, please. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share. Don't forget my basketball channel. If you like West Virginia hoops, come over to Hoops from the Hills, where I cover West Virginia sports. If you're watching this on X, come over to my YouTube channel, Couz's Corner. Subscribe there, please, and check out my previous content and the content that's uploaded, that's on demand, that's not live. Thanks to all of you. I appreciate your support. Have a top shelf day, and cue Country Roads.